Hello and welcome to NIL Edge, the show where the people shaping the future of NIL talk about how they're doing it, what they're doing, what's working, and how they're looking to improve NIL for student athletes. If you're inside an athletic department, a brand, a student athlete, or the parent of a student athlete, this is the spot for you. Each episode, we talk to NIL directors, brand leaders, and other innovators that are pushing the NIL game forward. We share success stories, equip you with ideas, and create a trusted space for NIL strategy and education. The show is produced in partnership with NIL Newsstand and Digital Sport by Hot Paper Lantern. I'm your host, Sterling Randle. I come from the world of strategic communications, and before that, I worked as an SID. So I see where critical communications, compliance, and brand building play a role in today's NIL era. Now, I work with brands and organizations at the intersection of sports and strategy. I help them navigate change, protect their reputation, and connect athletes to fans and businesses in meaningful ways. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Maya Bulger of Mississippi State. Without further ado, let's do it. We are so excited to be joined by Maya Bulger today. She is currently the Assistant Athletics Director for NIL Administration and Partnerships at Mississippi State. Before her time at Mississippi State and hailing from the Mitten State, Maya served as the Director of Football NIL at Washington during its undefeated 2023 regular football season, and was also the Director of Name, Image, and Likeness and Community Engagement at Illinois State. Maya, again, thank you so much for joining us. And how the heck are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited. Anytime I get the opportunity to talk about NIL, I'm all for it and bounce ideas, share experiences. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm a little bit all over the place where I grew up, but you and I have two touch points, and where I grew up and where I live, with me also having spent time in Mississippi and also spent time in Michigan as well. So I'm excited to talk to you. I just want to jump into it. Your role as NIL director at an SEC school, obviously there's a lot that's demanded of you. Can you tell us what a normal week or day is like in your shoes?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question. Not every day's the same. I know that sounds cliche, but it is the honest truth here. I will say I do function in a dual role. So a lot of my role is focused on revenue share and the logistics behind that, and then also with our third-party NIL. So there's a lot of paperwork from that standpoint of the revenue share standpoint, but also from a third-party NIL standpoint. There's so much fun and so many different things that happen. One day we could be going, like last week, we spent an entire day up in Jackson, Mississippi, giving Christmas gifts to kids at the children's hospital there. So a day can look like a road trip where we're giving back to the community, or it could be a 7-hour photo shoot anywhere in town or outside of town, or it could be a lot of just general paperwork, W-9s, getting student athletes onboarded into our payment system and things like that. So when I say, and you hear a lot of people saying that no day's the same, I truly mean it. There's so many things that go into it. There's education and all of that. So loaded question, but also, there's a lot that happens in the NIL space.
I think that's the best part about the NIL space, at least for me personally, is that it can and will never be the same day to day. Is that there's always a switch up and there's always something else going on, and it's ever changing.
Yes, that has been like the theme of my navigation and time period here in the NIL space. Is everything is different. I know I've been at, like you said, Illinois State, Washington, Mississippi State, all three incredible programs, all offering completely different things. So from that standpoint, ever changing, but also just with legislation and things like that, there's always something new in the NIL space that I've kind of just grown to love change, because it's always an opportunity to grow. So
now you brought something interesting up. You talked about like what the theme would be in your time in NIL, right? If you were to describe the theme or the philosophy for NIL at Mississippi State, what would it be? Do you guys have a mantra or a few words that you would describe the NIL program?
Yeah, so I try to put it into 3 buckets. The main one being education. That is something that we're gonna have to continue to do for our student athletes, for their parents, for businesses, just in general. And then the second bucket, I would pretty much say like brand enhancement. So helping our student athletes understand what a brand is, how to enhance it, how to navigate that space. And then lastly, just deal management. helping our student athletes stay on task, making sure that they're reading their contracts, making sure they're doing their deliverables for their contracts that they're signing and things like that. So as complex as it is, I try to simplify it and put it into those 3 buckets. But in those buckets, there's a loaded amount of things that go into that.
So you bring up all the paperwork and everything that you have going on from a day-to-day aspect. And when we previously talked, you talked about how you use Learfield, Open Doors, Teamworks, and everything to kind of work together. How do those partners help you do what you do on a daily basis? And how do you kind of leverage each of those to build what you are building at Mississippi State?
Yeah, so our partners have been amazing. I've been blessed, I think, just from what I hear around the country, to be in spaces where everyone communicates and functions very fluidly. I would even say at Washington, here, Illinois State, like I've had a great experience with Learfield, Open Doors, Influencer. And I think that has ultimately helped me as well as I navigate the NIL space, because I've been able to develop relationships at each school and kind of build on them. And so Learfield here at Mississippi State has been phenomenal in having opportunities for our student athletes and keeping the line of communication open. Hey, Maya, we have this deal coming up. They would love to work with this student athlete. Like, our communication has been phenomenal with getting deals brought to the table and then executed efficiently. Open Doors, we are not an Open Doors school. We just moved to Influencer. However, we were Open Doors previously, and we still continue to build on that relationship with Open Doors, which has been awesome. We just did a deal with Meta. And so Meta was actually the game sponsor of the Egg Bowl when we played the day after Thanksgiving this year. And so they were the game sponsor. They worked with Learfield from that standpoint, and then also worked with Open Doors to offer 6-figure deals to our student athletes in NIL. So not one individual deal with 6 figures, but the total package that they worked with our student athletes with was over $100,000, which was phenomenal. Again, not an influencer and Open Doors school anymore, but we still continue to have that relationship there. Influencer has been phenomenal with all of our platforms, from influencer disclosure, things like that, with our student athletes. So I do think it's important to leverage those spaces, just so student athletes now have the opportunity to leverage as many avenues to capitalize in that space. So again, I don't know that that's the actual consensus with a lot of schools around the country. I think I'm very fortunate to be in those spaces, but communication has been so important and has helped us find success there.
Now we're digging deep on this topic. We're about to hit the mantle here.
Yeah.
So when you get a deal from Learfield and they're like, okay, it's this company, actually, I'll go back. So I know when you and I first talked, you talked about some partners that you guys have. So when external partners, whether it be local or nationally based, and Learfield lines them up with you guys, how do you then match them up with the right student athlete? Is there an NIL intake form? Are you sitting down and having conversations with the student athletes? Is it the coach that's telling you? How do you guys know to match those student athletes up with the brands that fit best with them?
Yeah, so it's a combination between Learfield. They actually have a form that they'll send out and try to get as much information from the student athletes in terms of interest. And then also myself, I would say more so the liaison to the student athletes for the department. So I'm, whether it's doing the paperwork, like I know almost everything, probably too much about these student athletes from that standpoint. So it's a little bit of a mix between Learfield utilizing information they know about our student athletes, information I know about our student athletes. And then sometimes Learfield will say, hey, Maya, we need 5 student athletes for this deal. They want to work with the softball team and anyone who's from the state of Mississippi. And so I'll send a mass message out to the softball team and say, hey, here's a company that's working through Learfield. They want student athletes that are specifically from the state of Mississippi. If you're interested, let me know and I'll pass your information along. So again, that communication has been key. But a lot of that information will either come through myself, directly from the student athletes with information I provided them, or from Learfield.
And is there an NIL 101 seminar that every freshman gets or every transfer gets when they get there? Is there a specific, is there a class that they take? How do they get the ball rolling with their NIL when they do get to Starkville?
Yeah. So I'll meet with every team, give them the rundown of, hey, here's our NIL department. Here's everything you can expect to have offered to you through the year from an education standpoint. Here's what you need to know from a compliance standpoint. You're going to disclose your deals in NIL. NIL Go if it's over $600, and then influencer just in general. So they'll disclose in both of those. And so in this meeting, they'll get the full rundown of all the compliance kind of rules they have to follow, and then also just who they need to reach out to from a resource standpoint. So.
Now you brought up softball, which I love football and I love basketball, but I love talking about I'm not even going to call them non-traditional, but the sports on campus that get more shine in NIL. And I love talking about them with the University of Florida. We were able to talk about lacrosse. With Wisconsin, we were able to talk about hockey. What is it? I know having experience with Mississippi, I know that Mississippi runs on baseball, right? Can you tell me how baseball and softball, affect the whole NIL strategy at Mississippi State?
Yeah, so they're a big part of the NIL strategy, right? Like most schools, you'll hear a lot about football, you'll hear a lot about the basketballs, but like you mentioned, baseball is huge here. Softball is huge here, even soccer. Like for our soccer program, I believe we went to the NCAA tournament the last 4 years. I think softball was 4 of the 5 last years. Baseball 2024 had the most drafted student athletes from Mississippi State. So it's huge here. And it makes our strategy a little bit more complex, but it's a good problem to have, right? It's a great problem to be able to sit down and tell a recruit, hey, not only do we, focus on football, basketball, we also focus a lot heavily on our Olympic sports as well, right? And also baseball, softball. We had a track and field national champion last year. Like there's a lot of positivity in that, but yes, it does impact how creative you have to be in the NIL space from that standpoint. Positive, but definitely we have to be creative.
No, that's good. So I know when we spoke last time, before we started recording, that we had a conversation about Mossy Oak, right? A national brand that is local for Mississippi State. What makes this partnership work from an NIL standpoint? And can you tell us more about your work that you guys have done with Mossy Oak?
Yeah, so our development team has done a phenomenal job building, developing, keeping that relationship with Mossy Oak. And so a lot of the NIL activations we have with Mossy Oak kind of surround experiences. And so when you think about NIL and being creative, being authentic is something that we specifically try to stay on and stay in alignment with. And when you think about Mississippi State, a lot of the student athletes here and the people in the state of Mississippi love to hunt, they love to fish. And so Mossy Oak is the perfect opportunity to partner with because it provides that welcome to Mississippi State and we are Mississippi State authenticity, right? And so when you sit in a room with recruits and you tell them all the things that we've done, being able to speak to things that kind of set us apart and make us Mississippi State and differentiate us, that's the biggest plus for that. But, those opportunities from an NIL standpoint look like allowing our student athletes to come onto their actual grounds, go fishing, go hunting. It's actually really cool. They have a podcast one of our student athletes have been on. So it's super fun. And it helps us, honestly, just from a authenticity point and finding ways to differentiate ourselves from other institutions.
Okay, I want to dive deeper into the authentic. Obviously, that's something that's if we were to have a theme for our podcast, it would be authentic NIL deals make the world go round.
Yes.
This question might sound a little obvious, and it's like, well, if I had the answer to this, Sterling, I'd be a multi-gazillionaire. But what about authentic deals make them so much more successful than other deals that might have more monetary compensation behind them or bigger eyeballs behind them? Why is it that the authenticity shines?
Yeah, it shines because it lands well, right? When you think about the commercials, the ads you see, a lot of it resonates with someone because it tugs at your heart, or it resonates with you because it's something that you align with. And so when you're able to match a student athlete with the deal that aligns with their interest, you see how authentic and it hits home when you watch the campaign because it looks natural,
Mhm.
right? The student athletes having fun. If there's other talent from the actual company side, everyone is in alignment, and you can see that come out in the actual production of the commercial, the shoot, the photo shoot, whatever it may be. And so from an eyeball standpoint, I think it's just important, again, just because it hits home, um, and it just looks natural. And
Yeah.
so I always tell our student athletes, don't just reach out to companies because you just want an NIL deal, but I think you need to figure out, and that's where we get a lot and dig deep into our branding education, like figure out the things that you absolutely love,
Mhm.
right? And then go after those opportunities because it's going to, one, make the campaign look very authentic, real, and natural. But two, this company is going to want to work with you again because it was such a success, right? When you think about the people that follow you, they're following you because they align with your interests and your values. And so being able to align yourself in that company with whoever you follow or whatever it may be, whether it's a billboard, whether it's a commercial, it's going to drive more eyes to that company, which is what they ultimately want.
Now, that was first off, that was really good. That was so good. I wrote it down so I can make sure that I don't forget this part of the interview when I go back and
Mhm.
listen to it. I want to touch on that point in the authenticity. Um, would you say that's been a theme across your career in NIL so far?
Yes, I think just from the different places I've been, and I don't know if we're gonna get into this a little bit later in the
Yeah, no, this
interview,
is
but
this is yeah, I want to dive into it now and kind of
yeah,
hear more about what themes you've like have been consistent across the different
yeah,
backgrounds, because obviously you've been some very different places. Obviously
hmm,
Mississippi State, South, Washington, West Coast, a very
hmm,
unique brand. Again, Washington, Mississippi State, a very unique brand. Illinois
yeah,
State, obviously a very unique brand.
hmm.
Not a Power Four schools, but what are kind of the consistent themes that you've seen across those places?
Yeah. So when I talk to people about the difference between the institutions, and it makes me smile because I love all three of them. Illinois State is a very small knit community, and so the university thrives off the people there, right? And so that's probably their best attribute that they have is the people around the school are so invested into it. And so a lot of those deals that you see come through at Illinois State are going to be local businesses, right?
Mhm.
And it's just it further builds on building the institution as a whole because the student athletes give to the community gives back, and that's really how it runs. And so that's a big attribute to Illinois State. Then you get to University of Washington, where you're competing with so many professional teams. You have your professional football team, WNBA team, you have soccer. There's so many teams
Mhm.
that you're competing with there, where University of Washington had to find a way to be relevant there. And so that was something that was very different. Obviously, we were having really good success with the football program, right? So that was good, but you had to find ways to be unique in a different way. And so being able to leverage those bigger companies like Amazon, Boeing, Alaska Airlines, T-Mobile, things like that in Seattle made it so much different than Illinois State, right? Where Illinois State, the companies locally were going to buy into it regardless, right? So
Mhm.
that's had his own set of challenges there at University of Washington. And then I get to Mississippi State, where I would say it's a mix of both, right?
Mhm.
It's a power school, right, in the SEC. Then you also have a community around Starkville that is so bought into the culture. And so that has been probably the best thing for me because in Seattle, I loved how big the city was, but also at Illinois State, I loved how much the community bought into it. So being able to be here at Mississippi State was a combination of the both, but at all three places, I think the biggest thing I've had to do is find those things that make those institutions unique. And so that's been the best part. But being able to find things like at University of Washington, we did a really unique deal with Dick's Drive-In. And that's a really big company out in Seattle. And they did it was a photo shoot remade. I cannot remember the name of the artist, but we utilized our football players to basically do a remake of a music video, and it
Awesome.
right. So being able to see those deals come to life it was amazing. But I would say that authenticity has been the biggest thing in an NIL space, where essentially everyone at our level can offer the same things, right? Everyone has great facilities. Everyone has great facilities, great nutrition, great strength and conditioning programs. Everything is kind of flatlined, right? And then NIL, you have to find a way to make your program have something that's a little bit different than somebody else. And that's been something that I've had the privilege to do at each of my places that I've been at.
So from each of the vantage points that you've had from the different universities that you've been at, what do you think is like the most misunderstood part about NIL from an outside athletic perspective?
Oh, I think it's just the idea that these deals just land in these student athletes' laps. That is probably one of the biggest misconceptions. There's so much that goes into these NIL deals, right? Whether it's some student athletes have agents, some student athletes don't have agents. So you have to educate the student athlete, regardless of if they do have an agent or not. But there's just levels to getting a deal to the table and signed that goes into it that people just do not see. Also, these student athletes have to clean up their social media, obviously something that you should do regardless, but you are not just a college student anymore. You are now a person that a company is going to go into a business partnership with. So there's education from that standpoint, where they have to find out what their brand is, right? What makes them different than the next student athlete sitting next to them, whether that's on their team, in their position room, whatever that may be. There's a lot of deep diving into just who am I that has to go into work, cleaning up your social media, figuring out how to be a professional. You're now signing W-9s. You're now actually not W-9s. You're now getting 1099s. You are now signing contracts. These are all the things that student athletes did not have to do leading up to this NIL era. And I like to say with NIL, these are things that student athletes were doing after college. NIL just made it something that they have to do now. And so all of these things have to go into effect before the actual deal gets done. And people don't realize it. And I use the example of at the University of Washington, Michael Penix and Rome, honestly, but during our bye week, that was the 1 week that the student athletes have to be off, right? And they're supposed to be resting and recovering. And we had an NIL deal every single day that week. So what you're seeing is the final product and the deals, but we spent time, we flew to Adidas to launch the Adidas deal. We did a deal with Alaska Airlines. We did a deal with Celsius. There were so many opportunities, obviously phenomenal for the student athlete, but that's a lot of time that's supposed to be downtime for you preparing for football that you now have to spend on NIL opportunities, right? Obviously a phenomenal opportunity, grateful to have it, but there is a lot of time and a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that go into these deals that a lot of people just see and they're like, oh, they're signing a check for this and it happened, like there's a lot of time emotionally, mentally that student athletes also go into doing these things. So loaded response.
No, I love it. I love it. Again, I wrote that down as well. We're entering a spot where NIL has been around honestly long enough where if you're in your undergraduate right now, you can be like, oh, I'd like to work in, some part of the NIL industry, either on the institutional side or the brand side as a part of brand marketing and whatnot. Obviously, a lot of the people working in it now didn't have that opportunity. Like you come from the development world. What advice or experience matters for someone that wants to enter into this industry? Again, either from the university level or from a brand standpoint.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of experience that correlates straight to the NIL space. I mean, I obviously come from a fundraising and development side, so that's an important side that you can come from. If you have a business office background, like I mentioned, student athletes are doing tax forms, they're getting W-9s. An HR background could fit depending on the athletic department you're within. Sales works, right? There's some specific roles where you're actually just working with companies, finding ways to get, see if they're interested in NIL opportunities, marketing, social media, right? We're sitting with our student athletes trying to figure out, okay, you're supposed to do this deal. They told you that you need to do a day in the life. What does that look like, right? So there's a social media branding component to it. There's really so many ways today, now that NIL is set up the way that it is, to get involved. I think it's just honing into what the athletic department needs, and kind of where that fits with where you're at. I mean, again, fundraising, marketing, social media, branding, sales, all of those things could have a role here depending on the department. Loaded response again.
Again, we're on fire. We talked about it earlier. NIL, it's always changing. It's ever evolving.
Yeah.
What are some key characteristics of programs that have been able to differentiate and separate themselves and kind of rise above and really go beyond when it comes to providing for their student athletes?
I think it's when it comes to student athlete success, that education component is so important, right? Like, if you can educate your student athletes, and I know it's so hard to get an 18 to 22, 23-year-old to sit down and listen about taxes and financial management, but in the moment, a lot of our student athletes are like, oh my gosh, Maya, we're talking about this again. But after they graduate, they're always like, Maya, I'm so glad I was able to sit through that programming, right? And so for the success of the student athlete, I will always come back to education, because it's so important. And whether they use it now while they're in the NIL space or when they graduate, you're always going to have to know how to financially manage your money and things like that. So education is definitely a really big component. But also success in the NIL space across the NCAA is what I think is always going to fall back on creativity and then authenticity. How can your athletic department find ways to be creative and find things that align with that department and works well for them, right? If you find yourself chasing what other departments are doing, that's where you get lost, right? And so if you can find just like you're telling the student athletes to find their values and their brand, what is the brand and values of your athletic department? Capitalize on them and find ways to get creative in the NIL space. So innovation, creativity are really, really big when it comes to an athletic department.
So I kind of want to wrap up here and get to the question. These are some questions that we ask everybody, right?
Yeah.
What's your favorite NIL deal that you've personally been a part of? And it's like the one that like you go back to time and time again. You're like, all right, this is the blueprint. This is how it's done.
I really don't have one favorite one. I can quickly give you like a big one, probably at all three places. Oh my God. Okay, so I'll give you quickly one at all three places because all of them were phenomenal deals, but I love them all equally. I can start here at Mississippi State. So we were able to launch an actual jerk sauce on behalf of one of our women's basketball players. Her name was Jerkayla Jordan. Very awesome, very exciting. First food deal we were able to do, and then also phenomenal to be able to sell them actually in venue. Awesome. So when people came to our basketball games, they could buy her sauce. They could buy it on a jerk chicken sandwich, jerk chicken nachos. It was so much fun. Like, loved it. The person who also owned the sauce company is one of our former football players. So again, I love communication. I love being able to loop multiple departments, and that is successful for me. So Mississippi State, one of the ones that is dear to my heart. Absolutely love that one. Washington, the Adidas launch with Rome Odunze and Michael Penix, the first Adidas football deal ever. Super exciting. So much fun there. And then Illinois State, I probably would say having the opportunity to get our community together to develop their collective That was something that I absolutely loved, helping them, making sure that they stayed compliant with, because one, it was the first collective in our conference to service all of our student athletes. And that was big for me because there was some popping up with basketball specific, and being able to see, again, one thing I loved about Bloomington Normal was the fact that the community rallied around the institution. Being able to see them come together to develop a collective to service all of our student athletes was something that I absolutely love seeing. So again, loaded, tried to run through those quick, but it's hard for me to put one over the other because each place just offered so much. So
I love it. Okay, last question. So let's say I'm coming to Starkville. I've never been there before. Where's the one food spot that you're taking me to that's like, all right, this embodies Mississippi State?
That is so hard. There's so many local restaurants that are so good. It depends on what you want. Like there's really, okay, so my go-to, and it embodies Mississippi State, is there's a Texaco gas station.
Yeah,
And they have a barbecue restaurant inside, and the rib tips are phenomenal. So that's where I'm taking you. Texaco off of MLK, the smoker sits outside, and it started, sometimes I'm on my way in at like 5 a.m. The smoker's going.
I love it.
That's where I'm going.
That's how you know it's good. That's gas station food in Mississippi. For those who don't understand, it is in a league of its own.
It is.
Grab some boiled peanuts, grab a root beer, and let's get back in the car, and some rib tips, and let's get back in the car.
Yes. Oh, so good. They're consistent. You know what you're going to get. People are so nice in there. And again, gas station food, the best barbecue you can get in town. So that's where I'm taking you.
Well, Maya, I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for taking the time to tell us about your work at Mississippi State, and Hail State.
Hail State. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again to Maya Bulger for joining us and telling us about her work in Starkville. If you'd like to connect with me, Sterling Randle, feel free to do so on LinkedIn. Also, check out nilnewsstand.com for more episodes. You can also check out more episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcast. We'd really appreciate a review and leaving a rating. You can also find out more about digital sport by Hot Paper Lantern at hpldigitalsport.com. And you can find us and NIL Newsstand on LinkedIn. Hope everyone has a fantastic day, and we'll see you again next time.